Good morning, I'm Angelo Castro III.
I'm Angela, and we are the Castros.
We bring you the news.
And the views that make you think.
Sometimes we agree.
Sometimes we don't.
This is News and Views.
And here are today's headlines.
ACT Teachers Party List Representative Antonio Tino urged the House of Representatives and the Independent Commission for Infrastructure to conduct a deeper investigation into flood control projects, particularly in the Davao region.
Over 100 people have died following the onslaught of Typhoon Tino, according to the NDRRMC.
Saldico's lawyer faced the media for the first time to deny allegations linking his client to the flood control scandal.
Former Philippine National Police Chief, Police General Nicolas Torre III denied allegations that he is hiding Orly Gutesa.
First in the news, ACT Teachers Party List Representative Antonio Tino is calling for a deeper investigation into billions of pesos worth of flood control projects in Davao City, citing possible irregularities and ghost projects. Mobile Journal Amy Atienza has a report.
Lawmakers still look into the corruption probe as Representatives Antonio Tino and Terry Redon urge further investigation on flood control projects and the Dolomite Beach, respectively. ACT Teachers Party List Representative Tino wants flood control projects in Davao region to be investigated more. In the data he presented, 85 contracts worth 4.7 billion pesos in the 1st District of Davao during 2019 to 2022 have been red flagged due to reasons including project overload, double funding, changed location and shortchanging on flood control projects, awarded contracts lacking of details, and awarded contracts that are not in the General Appropriations Act.
Nakababahalang indikasyon na hindi regular, no? At maaaring merong possible ghost projects, maaaring clearly merong overpricing, no? At iba pang mga tipo ng anomalya, no? Kaya kailangan po na magpalalim pa ng investigasyon.
Tino, however, clarified why Davao 1st District should be the first to be looked into.
Well, I'm sure sasabihin na may politika, pero ang punto rito, sa sumbong sa Pangulo website, no, pag sinerch mo yung mga projects, for example, in Davao region, ang unang napansin o kapansin-pansin, merong mga proyekto ron na pinopondohan through MICA, Multi-Year Contractual Authority. So para sa akin, nag-stick out kagad yun. Sabi ko, bakit may mga flood control projects sa Davao region na Multi-Year Contractual Authority? Ibig sabihin, popondohan hindi lamang sa isang taon, kundi over several years.
Meanwhile, Bicol Saro Party List Representative Redon does not only limit these investigations to flood control projects, but also to the Dolomite Beach built during the Duterte administration. As the chairperson of the House Public Accounts Committee, Redon assured that there will be more study regarding this.
Tinatakdahan mo natin yung aktual na petsa. Ito po ang Dolomite Beach investigation po na Committee on Public Accounts. Ito po ay gaganapin sa November 19.
Redon will look further of the project's inclusion in the country's budget and the responsibilities of various agencies for the Dolomite Beach to push through. He also clarified that this step is not a diversionary tactic to shift the public's attention on other pressing issues in the country.
This is not about the former president. I think very important though that we have to focus on the DNR, DPWH officials who were actually complicit in the $389 million Dolomite project. Very important to know actually who was the person who originated the project itself.
Kapatid Amy Atienza, we are One News.
Right, so we're trying to get in touch with Representative Tino to give us more details about this. But of course, he showed a detailed report regarding these anomalous flood control projects in Davao. One of which actually, no Wednesday, ito naman ay through DPWH and ICI, visited daw yung ilang sites doon sa Davao at nakita nga nila parang within 8 months of the construction of that particular flood control project ay nasira na.
Yes.
No, so iyan yung isa sa mga dahilan, no? Ilan sa mga nakikita nating factors, no, ng mga flood control projects. It's either substandard siya, ghost project siya, ni-relocate, pero ganun din, wala naman din dun sa relocation ng document na pinapakita doon.
Kaya they're urging the ICI to proactively take a look at go out of the list of the president and take a look at the other projects na kahit wala ka pang report. Kasi anong nangyayari ngayon, yung mga projects na tinitignan, karamihan yung mga lugar na naapektuhan ng baha.
Oo.
Kasi titignan nila bakit. So, nag-react tayo. But they're saying, take a look at muna the places also na madaming projects na ginawa ng flood control, pero wala pang reported baha. Like, for example, Davao City. Yung Davao City, bihira naman kasi bahain dyan sa reports, no? But ang sinasabi nila, take a look at it muna bago may mangyari. Is it okay? Hindi mo sinasabing may problema eh. Basta may red flag, tignan natin. Ngayon kung ayusin na natin bago may madamay. And let's investigate.
Yeah, yun tama ka doon. No? Tinitignan din nila, lumilipat sila doon sa mga iniimbestigahan nila kapag binangyaring baha na. No? So particularly dito sa Davao City, sinasabi nga ni Representative Tino, no, na may mga iba't ibang mga reasons bakit red flag yung nakikita nga nila dito ng mga flood control projects sa Davao. At isa nga dito sa sinasabi niya, merong mga overlapped projects na inawardan na nung, kunyari, 2022, inawardan ng 2019, tapos biglang inawardan ulit ng 2020 na magkaiba ng presyo. So, yun yung mga nag-overlap na mga projects. They need to see.
Correct.
Oo. So,
kasi ang nangyayari is, parang yung nangyari kay Governor Everdoni na kausap natin. Nagbaha sa isang area, so nagtaka yung governor, bakit nagbaha doon? Di ba, he took a look at it, yung pala, walang existing project, non-existent project, ghost project na ginawa ng kumpanya ng Diskaya. Because may nangyaring baha. Kung hindi pa tinignan ni Gov, hindi na natin nalaman. Tapos, take a look at Cebu. Di ba? Kung hindi pa nagbaha sa Cebu at umulan, hindi titingin yung mga government units, meron palang problema dito na flood control na red flag. Tignan natin. So, let's proactively now take a look at other sites that have yet to be hit by floods before the floods happen.
Ito. And ako, I also agree with Mahar Lagmay, no, dun sa sinasabi niya na dapat mag-invest tayo sa science-based solution. Kasi ang nangyayari ngayon dito sa atin, well, ever since na tayo ay kumbaga inaaral natin itong mga usapin tungkol sa flood control projects, ang nakikita natin, madalas puro dike yung tinatayo ng mga DPWH sa iba't ibang lugar. So, hindi sila nagkakaroon talaga ng magandang flow ng tubig. So, ano nangyayari? Itong mga dike na to, kahit ilang, hindi natin alam kung substandard or what, nasisira lang din sila dahil dun sa lakas ng tubig, sa dami ng tubig na dumadating every time there's bagyo. So, I believe that science-based solution is the right thing to do at this point talaga.
And before we move on, quickly lang, kasi nabanggit din nila, kasi you have to remember, we are not like other countries. Tayo, may Metro Manila tayo, which is standardly dapat isang city yan sa ibang bansa. But Metro Manila has several small cities inside it.
Yes.
Na you cannot have your own flood control plan dito, tapos iba yung flood control plan.
Yes.
Nangyayari kasi, nagtayo tayo ng wall, ng perimeter wall to prevent water. Kunyari Quezon City, nung tinayo natin yung wall, hinarang naman natin ang flow ng tubig na Marikina. Sila naman ang nagbaha. So that's why sinasabi nila, there's a master plan made by former DPWH Secretary Singson before. That's synergistic.
Before he left the agency.
It's a synergistic plan that complements the entire metro.
That's true.
For it to flow out to Pasig River all the way out sa Manila Bay.
I agree with that. Kasi it happened during, I think, few months ago na nagkaroon ng bagyo dito sa Metro Manila when in fact si Mayor Vico Soto at saka yung Cainta Mayor, parang they work together kasi parang sabi niya sa Cainta, teka muna, wag mo isara yung floodgate mo dyan kasi pag sinara mo yung floodgate, iipon yung tubig sa amin. So nagkaroon talaga dapat yung mga ginagawa ng mga flood control project is holistic to within the Metro Manila and ganun din sa ibang lugar natin dito.
All right, more people have been confirmed dead due to Typhoon Tino, with Cebu Province recording the highest number of fatalities. Here's the report.
At least 114 people have died following the onslaught of Typhoon Tino, according to the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. Cebu recorded the highest number of fatalities. Other provinces including Bohol, Capiz, Leyte, and the Negros Island region also reported casualties. The primary causes of death in these areas are fallen debris and trees, landslides, and flooding. In addition, 82 people were injured, at least 127 individuals remain missing. The NDRRMC noted that there could be more casualties as rescue and recovery operations continue. At the evacuation center in Barangay Bakayan, Cebu City, News 5 spoke with Jimmy Abatayo. He could not hold back his tears as he recounted the tragedy his family endured. 10 of his relatives died, including his children, grandchildren, and wife, while 3 remain missing.
Sakit, sir. Sakit yun. But, nagmahay kay ko, sir. Sakit. Daghan. Ako yung nagpalaki sa kanila. Sakit. Kasi ako, nag-isa na lang. Wala na ako. Hindi ko but, puso ko hindi na tanggap.
Meanwhile, in Palawan, Typhoon Tinio brought strong winds and heavy rains when it made landfall on Wednesday morning. Nearly 38,000 residents were affected with no reported casualties. In Negros Oriental, a woman was killed when a boulder struck her home in Vallehermoso. Large boulders also damaged riverside houses in Canlaon City, leaving at least 12 dead and several others missing.
Typhoon Tino has exited the Philippine area of responsibility. However, Tino and its trough are still bringing rains over Palawan, Zamboanga Peninsula, Aurora, Quezon, Basilan, and Tawi-Tawi. Meanwhile, Fungwo, outside PAR, has intensified into a tropical storm. It is expected to enter PAR tomorrow late evening or Saturday early morning. Once inside the country, it will be given the domestic name Uwan. Pag-asa said there is an increasing chance of landfall on Monday over northern or central Luzon as a super typhoon. The rest of the country may also expect rains due to the Amihan, shear line, and localized thunderstorms.
Now, for more weather updates, let's talk to Pag-asa weather specialist John Manalo. John, good morning. When we last spoke, you gave your own opinion. Ano ngayon ang official stance ng Pag-asa as to the probability nitong supposedly Typhoon Uwan?
Thank you po, Sir Angelo, and hello po, Ma'am Angela, and ganoon din sa ating mga taga-subaybay. Mas tumaas na yung posibilidad na itong magiging si Bagyong Uwan ay mag-landfall dito sa pagitan ng Isabela at ganoon din naman sa pagitan itong northern part ng probinsya ng Aurora. Although nakikita natin na posible pa ito na magbago, pero mas tumaas na talaga yung chance na mag-landfall ito. At pwede pa ito na kumilos pa o mag-shift paakyat papunta sa northern Luzon, mas northernmost part ng Luzon, at posible naman ito na mas bumaba pa. At in that case, ay maaaring maapektuhan yung northern Samar, ganun din naman yung southern Luzon at kasama dito yung Metro Manila.
So, John, ang titignan natin track nitong bagyo is northern Luzon or central Luzon? Yung ba yung dalawang titignan natin?
Yes po, opo.
So, in either case, NCR will also be feeling the effects, definitely.
Tama po yun, Sir Angelo. So, nakadepende lang po dun sa pagbaba niya kung ano yung intensity or yung signal na number na kita natin na posibleng pinakamataas na maitaas dito sa Metro Manila.
Dikit ko lang, John, kasi I'd like to ask, anong klaseng bagyo to si Uwan? No? Ang na-experience kasi natin is usually may bagyo na malakas lang ang hangin, wala naman dalang ulan, or meron yung mas malakas yung ulan sa hangin. Ito, ano ba to? Combination ng both? What are we looking at?
Sa ngayon po, nakikita natin na kapag nagkaroon ito ng interaction dun sa shear line, yung shear line po, yan yung nagpapaulan sa atin na umabot dito sa Metro Manila ng mga nakaraang araw. Na kung saan ay umatras na ito, sa Isabela na lang po sa Cagayan na lang ito nakakaapekto sa ngayon. At kapag nag-merge yung kaulapan na associated with the shear line at dito kay bagyong magiging si Uwan, ay mas madadagdagan naman yung mga kaulapan na kung saan ay magdadala ng mga malalakas na ulan sa atin. And in terms naman ng lakas ng ulan, lakas ng hangin, kung i-compare natin itong si Tino at itong parating na si Uwan, di hamak na bahagyang mas malakas po itong si magiging si Uwan. Although nakikita din natin na pag naging super typhoon siya, nag-range din doon sa pinakamalakas na category na yung typhoon po nasa boundary siya ng papunta sa super typhoon, and then so pero nakikita natin na mataas pa rin yung chance na magsa-super typhoon ito.
But at the rate that it is going, John, kailan natin mararanasan yung peak nung bagyo na to, if ever? Kasi of course people are gusto nilang maghanda. Sabi nga nila, kung talagang Sabado ito, we only have 2 days to prepare.
Sa Monday and Tuesday po, ito mararanasan. Pero yung earliest na pwede tayong magtaas ng signal number 1, kasi yung signal number 1 natin ay may lead time na 36 hours. So posible yan na bukas ng gabi o madaling araw, yun yung pinakamaaga. Pero by Saturday pa natin na nakikita na talagang magtataas tayo. Magsisimula yan sa Bicol region and eventually sa eastern part ng Luzon. At yung kaulapan naman, ibig sabihin yung mga pag-ulan na maaari nang magdulot ng yung paglapit nito, by Sunday po natin mararanasan na yung trough or yung extension ng kaulapan niya ay makaka-apekto na sa eastern part ng southern and eastern part ng mainly Luzon, kasama din yung northern Samar.
Yung cone of uncertainty na pinag-uusapan natin yesterday, kasi I was asking nga kung maapektuhan din pa rin ba ito, kahit papano yung Visayas, because of course we're very concerned dahil katatapos na ng Tino sa kanila, o ng Tino, bagyong Tino.
Opo, nakikita din natin dun sa cone of uncertainty na binanggit natin, na kapag bumaba pa ito dun sa track natin, posible pa rin talaga na maapektuhan lalo na yung northern part ng Visayas. Noting na ito ay nasa magiging super typhoon category bago yung landfall o yung approach niya sa ating kalupaan.
John, given the data that you have right now and the probabilities nitong pagtama ng Typhoon Uwan, what wind signals are we looking at sa northern to central Luzon?
Maaari pong umabot ito ng signal number 4 and 5.
Wow.
So yung 5 po kung saan siya pinaka magda-landfall, yung babaybayin mismo nitong bagyo, yung aabot ng signal number 5, at kapag signal number 5, 185 kilometers per hour and above po ito. Ito yung tipo na talagang kayang makapagpatumba ng mga puno, at halimbawa yung bahay natin ay nasa tabi ng puno, dapat maging paghandaan na rin natin to. Halimbawa posibleng tumumba yung puno sa tabi ng bahay natin. Mga ganong senaryo po at paghahanda na dapat i-anticipate po natin.
Sa Metro Manila, ano yung highest signal na pwedeng maramdaman natin?
Sa kasalukuyan po, 1 and 2, signal number 1 and 2, pero wag natin alisin yung posibilidad na umabot ng signal number 3. At kapag bumaba pa ito ng tuluyan, ay sa ngayon, sa track natin ay signal number 3 po yung pinakamataas.
Okay. Naalala ko, John, correct me if I'm wrong, ganitong mga panahon, ito yung mga time na nagkaroon tayo ng Yolanda Diba? So, kung ihahalin tulad ito sa Yolanda or Undoy, ano yung mas malakas?
Si Yolanda po kasi ay dahil dumaan siya sa Visayas, at yung Visayas natin ay pulo-pulo. So may source pa rin ng lakas na ma-maintain niya yung kanyang intensity. Kaya ganun na lamang po yung naging pinsala. Also, nagdulot din po ito ng malawakang storm surge.
Yes,
At posible din naman po yun dito sa parating na bagyo. Kaya magtataas din po tayo ng hindi lang storm surge warning, ganun din yung gale warning. At in terms naman ng yung sa interaction with kalupaan, nakikita naman natin na pag landfall nitong paparating na bagyo ay mas hihina ito into typhoon category.
And I remember kasi, John, may mga pagkakataon na nagpo-forecast kayo na malakas yung bagyo, tapos pagdating ng bagyo dito, humihina siya. So I was wondering kung meron din bang ganong posibilidad dito sa bagyong Uwan na to?
Na humina?
Oo. And what would be the factors na ganon ang mangyayari?
Opo, tama po yan. Nakikita din natin sa ating forecast na pag bago siya mag-landfall, super typhoon category yung kanyang taglay. Pero pag landfall niya, ay mababawasan na yung energy o yung magsusupply ng moisture at warm sea surface temperature para mas ma-maintain niya yung super typhoon category. At pag lapag niya sa kalupaan ay nakikita natin na from super typhoon ay mas hihina ito into typhoon category. At typhoon category natin siya nakikita na babaybay sa ating mga kalupaan.
Well, last on my part, John, kasi sabi mo it needs a warm moisture, no? So pagtatama ba to sa, let's say, sa northern area na may prevailing amihan, no? Makaka-apekto ba ito sa kay Uwan?
Bali yung interaction po with amihan, yung pinaka worst case scenario natin ay yung binanggit natin kanina na interaction niya with the yung shear line. Pero yung sa amihan po kasi yung nagda-drive po diyan yung high pressure area. So yung high pressure area na yan, tumutulak po yan sa bagyo, halimbawa nitong paparating na bagyo. Kapag yung high pressure area ay pumatong o nasa itaas nitong bagyo, mas magiging mataas yung tsansa na mag-southward pa yung track nitong paparating na bagyo. And at the same time, mag-westward na movement na po itong bagyo. So yun naman po yung hindi natin I mean like kapag ganun yung nangyari, mas marami yung maapektuhan at mas tatama, mas mararanasan natin sa Metro.
We're hoping for
the best. We can only hope na malusaw ito along the way, no? But thank you for your updates at mas naliwanagan kami doon sa mga sinabi mo. Maraming salamat, Pag-asa Weather Specialist John Manalo. So ito nga kasi pinag-uusapan na online na diba? Since yesterday, because sabi nga na hindi pa lang tayo nakakatapos na mag-recover dito sa nangyari sa Tino, diba? Most especially yung sa Visayas area, sa Cebu most particularly.
But this one kasi is
the northern area. Naman sa northern area.
And this is very strong. Sabi nga nila, ang Diyos is trying to expose several projects kasi we were hit in the south at that usually the next storm was supposed to be in the south kasi probability pero nasa north.
Yes. Oo. Pero ito President Bongbong Marcos has approved a proposal to place the country under a state of national calamity following the onslaught of Typhoon Tino and the looming super typhoon.
For updates, we have Malacanang Beat Mobile Journal Julie Baiza on the line. Julie, go ahead.
Yes, Diego, Angela, magdedeklara nga ng State of National Calamity ang pamahalaan kasunod ng naging rekomendasyon ng National Risk Reduction and Management Council o NDRRMC sa pakikipagpulong sa Pangulo. Ayon kay Pangulong Bongbong Marcos, inaprubahan na niya ang nasabing rekomendasyon matapos makita ang lawak ng pinsalang iniwan ni Bagyong Tino na posibleng tumama sa bansa at sa posible namang inaasahang epekto ni Bagyong Uwan na posibleng tumama ngayong weekend. 10 rehiyon na raw yung tinamaan ng Bagyong Tino at maituturing niya talaga yan na national calamity. Ngayon dahil sa deklarasyon naman ng national calamity, mas magkakaroon na ng mabilis na access sa pondo para sa emergency. Pangalawa, mas mabilis din ang magiging procurement o pagbili ng mga supplies, maging mas madali na daw at hindi na kakailanganing dumaan pa sa bureaucratic process. Diego, Angela, pagkatapos ng meeting, humarap nga ang Pangulo at nagbigay ng pahayagan noong sinasabi niya, bukod dito sa paghahanda or bukod dito sa pagtulong sa Bagyong Tino, binabalanse na rin nila kung paano yung magiging deployment ng mga authorities at ng mga first responders natin. Kailangan daw kasi na wala naman doon sa mga napinsalang lugar lang yung mga responders natin, kundi maipwesto na rin sila bilang paghahanda naman kay Bagyong Uwan.
Okay. Yes, Julie, kasi under the national state of calamity, no, ang may access dito sa pondo is the national government. Now, we also have yung mga individual LGUs that have, like Cebu, declared a national state of calamity and they have access to their own funds. So, ano mangyayari dito with this national state of calamity? Are the LGUs still encouraged na magkanya-kanyang sa state of calamity sa area nila or ito na ang prevailing order?
Sa local na pagdedeklara kasi ng mga national emergency or calamity sa kanya-kanyang lugar, may access na rin sila mabilis doon sa quick response fund ng mismong LGU or ng provincial government. Ngayon, kung kukulangin kasi yun, kinakailangan na magbigay pa yung national government. Kaya kinailangan din ng Pangulo na magpalabas ng state of national calamity naman. Kasi para mapunuan yung pangangailangan ng bawat LGU. Kasi sinasabi niya sa ngayon, 10 regions na raw yung apektado. Kaya mas malaking pondo na yung kinakailangan. Isa pa raw kailangan paghandaan, Diego, Angela, is yung paparating nga na bagyo.
Yes.
Kaya hindi pa pwedeng yung nakapreposition lang natin ng mga relief goods at mga kinakailangang supplies. Yung nakahanda sa ngayon. Kailangan dagdagan pa yan at patuloy nga yung maging production ng DSWD.
Okay, so maiba naman ako ng tanong sa iyo, Julie. Nakapunta na ba si President Bongbong Marcos sa Cebu? Kasi sabi daw ni Yusek, bibisita siya doon eh.
Oo, sinabi ni Undersecretary Claire Castro kahapon na bibisita nga si Pangulong Bongbong Marcos sa Cebu. Ang inilabas na schedule ng palasyo, tomorrow pa yung magiging visit niya, although hindi pa inilalatag sa atin saan mismo yung kanyang pupuntahan sa Cebu or ano yung bibisitahin niya, kung evacuation center ba at kung magkakaroon ba siya ng situation briefing kasama yung mga yung mga opisyal ng lokal na pamahalaan. Pero kahapon briefly na pag-usapan na rin namin yung naging post or pahayag ni Governor Pamela Baricuatro na sinasabi niyang 26 billion daw yung flood control project sa Cebu. Pero bakit lubog sa baha yung lalawigan? Ang sabi ni Castro, yan nga daw yung dahilan kung bakit si Pangulong Bongbong Marcos nag-initiate ng investigasyon para makita at mapanagot kung sino yung mga nagkulang dito sa flood control projects. Pero ang dapat daw tingnan, hindi lang naman yung flood control projects ng administrasyon, kundi nung nagdaang administrasyon. Kasi meron na daw, if I'm not mistaken, more than 400 or 300 na flood control projects from 2016 to 2022. So dapat daw, gumagana na yung mga yun ngayon.
Okay. So itong pagdedeklara ng approval ng recommendation to declare national state of calamity by the President, ito, meron na bang nakalagay kung hanggang kailan?
Wala pang verbal pa kasi yung naging pahayag ng Pangulo.
Yes.
Wala pang nilalabas na papel or yung dokumento. So kapag nabigyan na tayo ng kopya, makikita natin doon gaano kahaba yung magiging sakop ng national calamity.
Right. Kasi I remember yung longest natin ba 6 months na na-extend during the pandemic eh. 'Di ba?
Hindi kasi pandemic.
Yes,
Oo. Yeah, Julie, I'd like to ask so since nadeklara na itong national state of calamity, with regards to evacuation efforts, does this mean yung mga tao na nakatira sa critical areas identified by the hazard map will be relocated under the budget of the national government at hindi na ito sa LGU?
Lilinawin natin, Diego, kung paano yung magiging hatian kumbaga ng pondo sa ganyan. Kasi ngayon currently, yung sagot pa ng local government yung relocate yung pondo sa mga evacuation centers kasi hindi pa naman lumalabas kung magkano yung ibibigay ng national government. Wala rin sinabi ang Pangulo na certain amount kung magkano yung ilalabas natin or ilalaan for Tino and for Uwan.
Okay, clarify ko lang yung budget na nagagamitin sa National State of Calamity will be disbursed and used by the executive agencies, no? At hindi ito ibibigay sa mga LGU.
National government yung maglalabas, pero kung kinakailangang tulungan or umagapay para dun sa mga humihingi ng pondo, kasi marami na rin mga lalawigan yung humihingi ng pondo ngayon, pwedeng palabas or mag-release ng pondo yung Department of Budget and Management sa kanila.
Malinaw.
And of course, to add lang dito sa recommendation na to, kasama na dyan of course yung price freeze, no? Julie?
Pwedeng magkaroon ng price freeze order kapag under tayo ng state of calamity. Pero yun, hindi naman nga lalagpas ng 60 days yung price freeze. Pero nauna na yung ibang lalawigan, nauna na silang nagpa-abiso na may mga price monitoring at hindi nga tataas yung presyo ng pangunahing bilihin sa kanilang lugar, lalo na doon sa mga naapektuhan sa bahagi ng Visayas.
Alright, sige. Any more to add dun para dito sa declaration na ito?
Yun lamang, Angela, ang tinitiyak nga daw ng pamahalaan sa ngayon na mahahati or mababalanse yung pagtulong ng gobyerno, hindi lang doon sa mga naapektuhan ng Bagyong Tino, pero bilang paghahanda na rin dito sa darating na Bagyong Uwan.
Wait, maihabol ko lang, Julie, kasi usually kapag meron tayo mga ganitong national disaster, may mga foreign aid tayo nagdadatingan. Ngayon ba meron na tayong report from the Malacanang kung meron na tayong mga aid from other countries?
Wala pang iniulat yung palasyo sa atin. Kahapon ang inilatag lang ni Yusek Castro kung ano lang yung ginagawa ng pamahalaan, yung DOH at saka yung DSWD. Pero walang humanitarian aid from any international agencies o yung ibang bansa din na nagpapadala nga sa atin. Pero kung mas maiuulat siguro yung mas malaking pinsala. Karaniwan naman
Correct,
nagpapadala
that's right.
yung mga ally countries natin.
Alright, sige, maraming salamat and we will continue to get in touch with you. That was our Malacanang Beat Mobile Journal, Julie Baiza.
Usually, ang foreign aid comes in when when the disaster that hits is over and above the capacity already
Of the national government.
of the national and local government combined. Yung hindi na kaya because overwhelming yung infrastructure and casualty count. That's when foreign aid comes in. Pero pag it's within the capacity of the local and national government, usually meron ng standby fund for that.
Okay, we'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning. You're still watching News and Views here on One News. An urban designer says the massive flooding in Cebu didn't come out of nowhere. It was years in the making. Here's a report.
Landscape architect and urban designer Paulo Alcazaren has expressed frustration over the extent of damage caused by the recent flooding in Metro Cebu, calling it a disaster waiting to happen.
Of course, I'm Cebuano, so thoughts and prayers to everyone there. But yes, it's a bit of a shock to see all of the people who were affected and died because of all of this. I mean, the problems had been building up over the years, of course. And Metro Cebu has roughly the same problems as Metro Manila, so slightly smaller scale.
Alcazaren points to years of deforestation, rapid urbanization, and poorly maintained drainage systems as the main causes behind the massive flooding. He said many river systems in Metro Cebu have been lined with concrete revetments that, instead of preventing floods, have actually made things worse.
The lining of the river revetments with concrete actually do more harm than good, according to USEC CP David, and I've been traveling around Cebu this past 3 years ever since COVID lifted.
He recommends using nature-based solutions, which he says are cheaper and more sustainable than concrete structures, but admits that these aren't always possible in highly urbanized areas.
NBS is often less expensive than concrete, of course, and nature-based solutions are the more sustainable solutions. But it's not always doable in some areas, especially with high urbanization. So
there
the buildings
can be a hybrid.
It can be it has to be a hybrid, but it has to be done based on a master plan.
Alcazaren also called out the lack of coordination between government agencies and local governments. The landscape architect also criticized the development of Monterrazas de Cebu, a project linked to celebrity Slater Young, calling it problematic.
Yes, that used to be a vegetated slope in the uplands of
So that's
Cebu.
problematic.
That's problematic.
Because you need trees there.
If we don't address where the floodwater or stormwater will be channeled.
As Metro Cebu struggles to recover from the disaster, Alcazaren urges policymakers to rebuild with science, planning, and coordination at the forefront.
Former Ako Bicol Party List Representative Zaldico's lawyer faced the media for the first time to deny allegations linking his client to the multi-million peso flood control scam. Here is the report.
For the first time, the lawyer, former Ako Bicol Party List Representative Zaldico, faced the media to respond to allegations against his client. Attorney Rui Rondain said he does not know Ko's current whereabouts, noting that they have only been communicating by phone.
I do not know where he is because I never asked him where he is. It's not relevant for his defense. And I never asked because I don't want to have to lie to any of you when you ask me that.
He clarified that the former lawmaker is not in hiding, but is afraid to return home due to alleged serious threats to his life.
He's deathly afraid of coming home because may serious threats to his life. One half of the country wants to throw him in jail and throw away the key. The other half wants to string him up by the nearest tree. Would you come home under those circumstances? Ko personally, ang bigger fear ko is vigilante violence. Everyone hates him.
Ko is among those recommended by the Independent Commission for Infrastructure to face graft, malversation, and falsification charges over the alleged 289.5 million pesos flood control anomaly in Oriental Mindoro. Separate complaints were also filed before the Department of Justice for graft, indirect bribery, and malversation of public funds. Rondain believes the Ombudsman has already prejudged the case and said they will no longer file a counter-affidavit.
My thinking is the Ombudsman has already prejudged this case. And this is bolstered by the statements of Secretary Vince Dizon, who said 60 people will be in jail by Christmas. Under these circumstances, there's really no tactical benefit to filing a counter-affidavit. So the answer is, at this time, the way things are going, no, he does not intend to file a counter-affidavit.
The lawyer also dismissed Senate witness Orly Gutez's claim that they delivered suitcases of kickbacks to Ko's home, calling it pure rumor and speculation.
Who's making that accusation? And where is he now? Na wag naman chismis, wag naman speculation, because hindi tatayo in a court of law. Who's saying na mayroon deliveries? Did they see my client receive the delivery of money? I'll even reduce it to an absurdity, Is it possible na may utang lang sila, nagbayad sila?
Rondain further denied that Ko made budget insertions or owns billions of worth of aircraft. He said the planes are registered under Misibis Bay Corporation, a company separate from Ko.
Representative Ko, wala siyang may-ari na any aircraft. I understand that any aircraft related to him.
The Senate Blue Ribbon Committee has invited Ko to attend its next hearing on the issue. However, Rondain said his client will only appear once the threats to his life have been resolved.
The Independent Commission for Infrastructure is set to file its fourth interim report. Let's get more details from Mobile Journal, Arles de los Santos. Arles, ano ba itong fourth interim report? Anong nilalaman nito?
Angela at Diego, ilang minuto na lamang ay inaasahan natin na magkakaroon na nga ng press conference. Itong si ICI Chairperson Andres Reyes para ipaliwanag sa atin kung ano nga ba ang nilalaman ng ika-4 na interim report ng Independent Commission for Infrastructure hinggil pa din doon sa mga maanumalang flood control projects ng pamahalaan. Kung matatandaan ninyo, noong nakaraan na nagsampay ito ng recommendation ay kasama na yung mga pinuno dati ng DPWH na si Manuel Bonoan at ang mga undersecretary nito at ang mga may kinalaman doon sa 72 million pesos na Manoy Ghost Flood Control Project sa Plaridel, Bulacan. Ang ngayon, alas 11 ng umaga ay inaasahan na magsisimula sila alas 11 ng umaga ay tutungo na sila doon sa Office of the Ombudsman para sa bagong case recommendation nito.
Okay, aside from this case recommendation, nagkaroon kasi ng report, Arles, na nung Wednesday, nagbisita ang DPWH along with ICI na nakita nga nila sa may bandang Davao ay meron dong nasira na flood control projects 8 months after it was completed. So I was wondering, is this going to be part of the interim report and why did they go there? Ito bang area na to ay parte din ng unang mga listahan ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos sa mga flood control projects or kasama ito dun sa mga sumbong mo sa Pangulo website complaints?
Angela, yung pagtungo doon ni Secretary Vince Dizon para inspeksyonin yung sa Davao na flood control projects doon ay nakabukod iyon sa investigasyon ng ICI. Maaari na kung ano man ang naging finding dito ni Secretary Dizon ay ipapasa din nila ang report dito sa Independent Commission for Infrastructure. Pero ang isa sa mga tinitingnan natin dito actually kung di tayo nagkakamali si Mayor Magalong yung kasama niya dito yun yung nakita nating huling mga ulat pero bukod pa dyan, hindi lang sa Davao yung patuloy na sisilipin ng Independent Commission for Infrastructure, kundi maging yung balita na kumakalat na yung 26 billion pesos daw na flood control project sa Cebu pero sa kabila ng halaga na yan at ng mga proyekto ay nalubog pa rin ito sa baha. Dito nga dahil sa bagyong Tino na dumaan.
Okay. So Arles, for now, ang ICI will strictly look at flood control projects muna before moving on to other infrastructure projects.
Yes, Diego, nakatutok sila doon sa 421 pa din na initially suspected na mga ghost flood control projects na ngayon daw talagang kalat-kalat sa Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao.
Ano timeline nila for this 421 na ma-resolve?
At least the latest we have there, Diego, ay yung kanilang cooperation sa AFP, PNP at DepDev, no, nang sa gayon nga ay mas mapabilis ang mobilization para sa pagkalap ng mga impormasyon at mga ebidensya na dapat daw ay tumayo sa hukuman kung ito man ay ma-identify na ghost flood control projects or substandard ghost flood control projects. Kailangan daw masundan at masiguro na tama yung mga impormasyon na makakalap dito mula sa simula ng pag-bid ng mga proyekto na ito hanggang sa pagtatapos.
Okay, Arles, we understand na even before pa nagsapina na ang ICI, no, parang mapapunta dyan si former Congressman Zaldico, pero yun nga, to no avail, ika nga, no, hindi naman siya pumupunta dyan. Nagsalita na yesterday yung kanyang abogado, although sabi niya, hindi niya alam kung nasaan yung kanyang kliyente. At this point in time, ang ICI ba is looking at recommending na ma-cancel yung passport ni Zaldico?
Kahapon, Angela, no, tinanong na natin agad yan kay ICI Executive Director Brian Keith Hosaka kung dahil daw ayaw nga nito magpakita dito sa ICI, no, ang isa sa mga nakikita talaga nila ay yung pagkansela niya ng passport, no, pero kailangan kasi, no, ayon din sa DFA na dapat merong reklamo sa Regional Trial Court na sinasabi na nagtatago ang tao na ito sa batas o ito ay pugante o convicted ng anumang krimen, no? Pero ayon sa abogado ni Zaldico, no, na si Rondain, ay wala pa daw siya nakikita na complaint na pinanumpaan.
Oo nga. Kaya nga I was wondering kung meron ng planong gawing complaint din ng ICI para nga maisagawa na yung pagkakansela nga ng pasaporte ni Zaldico. Because naiinip na rin yung mga tao. Gusto nilang malaman, 'di ba, kung ano ba talaga yung kwento dito, 'di ba, yung allegation tungkol kay Congressman Zaldico.
Isa nga sa Angela, actually sa mga natanong natin, no, sa council mismo ni Ko, na kung hindi makakauwi ng Pilipinas si Ko dahil sa seryosong mga banta sa buhay na ito, what if he attends the hearing through remote conference, Zoom meeting or Google, like any platform or way that he can explain his side, no, at least for these allegations thrown at him. Ayon sa kanya, hindi pa daw nila nakukonsider kasi parang prejudge na nga daw itong si Ko. Tinanong din natin sa ICI, pero ayon kay Hosaka, kailangan pa itong isang mga commissioner ng ICI, no, nang sa gayon ay ma-plansya nga kung ano ang maaring maging aksyon dito, nang sa gayon ay masagot na talaga itong mga alegasyon kay Ko.
Naku naman, napaka-social naman nun. Ano? Iba talaga pag may pera ka, pwede kang mag-Zoom.
Pero Arles, yung cases ni Zaldico, now that he's not a congressman, sa ombudsman pa rin ba at Sandigan Bayan ang takbo nito? Or will the DOJ have its own counterpart case to be filed sa RTC?
Diego, ang huli natin nakuhang informasyon sa ombudsman, no, ay mayroong itong ginagawang parallel investigation sa DOJ pati na rin sa ICI. So maaari kung ito ay hindi na siya bahagi ng Kamara dahil nga nagbitiw na siya bilang congressman, maaaring yung criminal charges niya ay talaga para na sa kanya bilang isang individual. So
kasi ang kailangan, Arles, no, is for his passport to be canceled, he has a pending case filed at the RTC. Or tama ba ako, Sandigan Bayan?
Ang huling update natin, Diego, ay RTC dapat lang. Ang korte mismo ang mag-re-recommenda na i-cancel ang passport ng isang individual.
Okay, so recently, yesterday ba tong report na to, actually today, yung ICI nakakuha na ng 41 million budget for this year, for 2025. So this will cover yung mga sinasabi, of course, ng ICI na mga logistics na kailangan nila to live stream yung kanilang nagiging investigation. So kailan na natin malalaman kung kailan sila talaga mag-live stream?
Angela, dito ay inaasahan natin na November 11, no, pag nagsimula na ulit na magpatawag ng mga resource person ng ICI, yung live streaming kasama na din doon, no, sa magbabalik. Kasi nitong nakaraang mga linggo, kung mapapansin nyo, walang mga resource person na pinatatawag ang ICI dahil tuloy-tuloy daw ang kanilang case build-up, no, at yung pagpapasa ng interim report and case recommendation sa ombudsman. So sa pagbabalik ng mga pagdinig nito sa November 11, hinihintay natin kung kasama na rin ba dito yung pagla-live stream ng mga pagdinig ng ICI. Kahapon, nakumpirma ni ICI Director Brian Keith Hosaka na doon sa 41 million pesos ay kasama na doon yung ipambibili ng mga kagamitan para sa live streaming na isasagawa at ang pagbubukas ng 172 na mga contractual positions para mas mapabilis ang pagganap ng komisyon sa mandato nito.
Arles, mag-backtrack lang ako. Last question on my part. Backtrack lang ako ng content kasi nakakalimutan ng mga tao. Yung kay Bryce Hernandez with regards to his computer or yung laptop niya na supposedly may critical information na hindi linabas sa Blue Ribbon dahil ibibigay daw yung jurisdiction sa ICI. May balita na ba tayo dito kung nakita na ng ICI yung laman ng computer?
Wala pa rin tayong nakukuha ang impormasyon dyan, Diego. Pero ngayon, sa isasagawang press conference ay kung maaari, buksan na rin natin ito. Nang sa gayon ay malinawan kung ano-ano nga ba ang laman nito at ano yung mga papeles na at saan tayo dinadala ng mga impormasyon na maaaring lamnin nitong computer ni Bryce Hernandez.
Sige, Arles.
Arles, ipatanong mo na din mamaya sa press con nila kung papatawag din nila yung sinasabi ni Senator Rodante Marcoleta na aide ni former Congressman Zaldico, yung Matthew and Paul na supposedly ay tinatago din daw dahil ayaw nilang magsalita. Alright, sige.
Alright, Arles, thank you. But keep us updated. Thank you, mobile journalist Arles de los Santos.
Now, in other news, the 2025 Manila Dialogue on the South China Sea opened yesterday in Taguig, bringing together foreign policy experts, defense officials, and regional leaders to discuss maritime security and reaffirm the Philippines' commitment to the rule of law in the West Philippine Sea. Mobile journalist Mermon Reyes has the report.
The 2025 Manila Dialogue on the South China Sea launched yesterday in Taguig its second run, gathering foreign policy experts, academics, defense officials, and thought leaders to discuss and debate issues and plausible solutions surrounding the South China Sea. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., through his keynote address read by Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin, reaffirmed the country's unfazed stand on the West Philippine Sea, declaring that the Philippines remains guided by the 2016 Arbitral Award and the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. President Marcos also called on states to heed international rulings and take into account opinions that provide legal clarity in international disputes.
The 2016 South China Sea Arbitral Award brought legal clarity and finality to long-standing issues in our maritime region. It reaffirmed that peace and justice can only prevail when the rule of law, as embodied in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas, or UNCLOS, guides the conduct of nations.
The president emphasized the need to ensure that the rule of law, peace, and stability are never optional in the Indo-Pacific, especially given the ongoing tension in the South China Sea. The Philippines is, however, keeping lines open with China and other ASEAN states to promote cooperation, yet ready as well to speak out when needed.
Keeping lines of communication open with China and other ASEAN claimant states maximizes bilateral and regional mechanisms, ensuring our continuous peaceful relations. Our diplomacy will continue to firmly protest and disagree where it is right, but also to cooperate and communicate where it is practical and beneficial for the country.
Marcos also reaffirmed the country's commitment in addressing maritime challenges, as it is not alone and is continuously working with like-minded countries for multilateral or bilateral engagements and capacity building. The dialogue, convened by the We Protect Our Seas Foundation, is envisioned to be an annual Track 1.5 process, focusing on promoting adherence to international law and identifying actionable policy recommendations for regional peace and stability.
Day after day, in the South China Sea, the rule of law is eroding, and we must not look away. We wanted to move beyond endless repetition of talking points and instead clarify in concrete terms what a rules-based order truly means for our region, for the South China Sea, and how we can defend it.
This day's roster includes discussing freedom of navigation, defense cooperation, battling disinformation, and enhancing security cooperation, where One News as the big story anchor Cez Drilon will sit as panelist chair. One News serves as an official media partner of the event. Kapatid mobile journalist Mermon Reyes, we are One News.
The Philippine Air Force has identified the 6 personnel who died in a helicopter crash in Agusan del Sur on Tuesday, November 4. For the details, we have News 5 correspondent Bril Montalvo. Bril, go ahead.
Angelo, isang send-off ceremony nga ay sinagawa dito sa Davao City para sa 6 na miyembro ng Philippine Air Force na nasawi sa bumagsak na helicopter sa Agusan del Sur noong Martes. Di mapigilan ng kapatid ng nasawing si Sergeant Yves C. Job ang pagdadalamhati nang salubungin ang kanyang mga labi. Simbolo ng kanyang kagitingan, may nakabalot ng bandera ang kabaong ng sundalo. Dinala sa Davao City ang ilan sa mga labi para sa autopsy at forensic examination. Kinilala ang mga biktima na sila Captain Pauli Dumagan, Second Lieutenant Royce Luis Camigla, Sergeant Yves C. Job, Sergeant John Christopher Gulfo, Airman First Class Erickson Merico at Airman Amir Kaidar Apion. Tutulong sana sila sa mga nasalanta ng Bagyong Tino na mangyari ang trahedya. Dadali ng 4 sa mga biktima sa Villamor Air Base sa Manila. Samantalang ang 2 iba pa ay dadalhin sa Zamboanga City at General Santos City dahil taga roon sila. Nagpapatuloy pa ngayon ang investigasyon ng otoridad hinggil sa sanhin ng aksidente. Sa mga oras na ito, Angelo, ay ang bangkay pa lang ni Sergeant Yves C. Job ang nailipad sa kanilang lugar sa General Santos City, lulan ng eroplano ng Philippine Air Force. Hinihintay pa natin ang 5 pang biktima dito sa TOG-11 para maiuwi na sa kanilang mga lugar. Angelo.
Bril, pending yung confirmatory investigation ng cause of the crash. No? Usually may initial findings pa yan. Meron na ba tayong initial na tinitignan na possible cause ng pagbagsak nitong chopper?
Angelo, ayon nga sa Philippine Air Force ay nandun pa sa crash site doon sa bulubunduking bahagi ng Loreto, Agusan del Sur ang investigating team nila. At sa ngayon, Angelo, ay wala pa umano silang maiibigay na initial na report nila hanggat hindi pa tapos ang kanilang naging investigasyon po sa crash site. Angelo.
All right, thank you, News 5 correspondent Bril Montalvo, for that report.
Now, former PNP Chief General Nicolas Torre III speaks out amid speculations on his future in the police force and his possible role in ongoing investigations. In an interview on The Big Story, Torre confirmed he remains under the PNP's personnel holding an accounting unit after his leave ended. He said being in floating status is part of transition periods in a police career. Torre also admitted that no new position has been offered to him yet.
As of the moment, wala pa. So, I'm just waiting for the order of the President. Dahil presidential appointee ako. So, he can put me where he deems proper or where he deems needed. He can always give me the order.
When asked about allegations that he is hiding witness Orly Gutesa, who testified against former Speaker Martin Romualdez and Zaldico, Torre denied involvement, calling it giving him too much credit.
Saan naman galing yan at you're giving me too much credit. I may help pag hiningian ako ng tulong, pero sa ngayon, I just don't see myself in there. I don't think that I have any business in that.
PLDT Home turns up the heat in the streaming scene. The telco giant is expanding its entertainment lineup, adding HBO Max to its powerhouse roster of streaming partners alongside Signal and Netflix. Mobile journal Arles de los Santos has the details.
To further cement its position as the Philippines' telco leader in home entertainment, PLDT Home has added fire to its powerhouse lineup of streaming partners. Along with Signal and Netflix, PLDT Home now has HBO Max as part of its roster of world-class content partners bundled into PLDT Home's Fiber Only All plans. Through a spectacular night of sound and showmanship, Jan Palanca, PLDT Senior Vice President and Business Head, alongside other PLDT Home executives and media partners, pressed play together to celebrate the milestone.
Well, we're actually happy that HBO Max is part of our family now. For the longest time, we've been selling connectivity, our reliable connectivity, our faster speeds. But we know that really connectivity is not relevant to an individual person. It's really relevant to the home. By popular demand, HBO Max has partnered with us. We're the first partners in the Philippines. So to me, that's very significant that they've selected PLDT as their partner. The confidence and trust that they have in our brand shows, I guess, speaks volumes about the connectivity, which is important in ensuring good streaming to the home.
With this, new and existing customers of the enhanced PLDT Home Fiber and the All Plan 2499 and Plan 3199 now get HBO Max standard subscription as part of their fiber connection on top of their monthly access to Netflix and Signal. These upgraded plans combine unlimited internet with speeds up to 700 Mbps and 1 Gbps respectively, unlimited calls and unlimited access to world-class entertainment, over-the-top services, all in one subscription. PLDT Home promises to continue to evolve the way Filipinos experience entertainment, ensuring that Filipinos can stream all these shows instantly, effortlessly, and in stunning quality.
This is just the beginning. What you're seeing today with Signal, with Netflix, with the gaming platforms IGV, and with HBO Max especially, is just the beginning. Abangan ninyo, there's going to be more as we develop other offerings that will continue to be bundled with our plans that will make connectivity and the home lifestyle experience relevant.
Hosted by Kit Cortez, Mr. Pilipinas Eco International 2025, PLDT electrified the night with music from Cow Manila's DJ Araguino, a drag performance by Budalin, and stand-up comedy acts from Alex Calleja, Israel Bueno Obra, and Yuki Hirokoshi, with the night capped off by a live performance by rock band K1 at Cow Manila Newport Mall in Pasay City. Kapatid Arles de los Santos, we are One News.
And that wraps up today's episode of News and Views.
Join us again tomorrow. I'm Angela Lagunsad Castro.
And I'm Angelo Castro III. Kapatid, we are One News.
All sides, all the time.